watching The End Zone, sponsored by Lucky Star Casino.
And welcome to another edition of The End Zone. I am Colby Daniels. Joining us this week is George Stoia with Soonerscoop.com and giant Thunder fan, which is perfect because it is Thunder Mania in the state of Oklahoma, George.
It's been awesome, Colby, and you know, it's been stressful. Not as stressful as the Nuggets series, but it's been a lot of fun. And I'll tell you too, Colby, I love the tears. There's a lot of OKC Thunder haters right now.
That's right.
And I love it. So
the hate online is very strong
insane
right now. NBA Twitter has lost their minds over not just Shea, but the Thunder in general.
You got to remember that a lot of those haters are probably like teenagers, you know, hiding behind their social media handles. But it's been a lot of fun, and Shea winning the MVP last night and holding the trophy.
Incredible.
It was awesome, and just a great moment for the city. I know that the vibes around town have just been awesome, and I know you've been at the games, but the crowds look electric. And then for the Thunder to dominate, and I was just telling you before we got on here, the growth and development of this group over the past few weeks has just been astonishing to watch.
Yeah, that Denver series, I think you really saw a young team start to mature in a way that you start to feel that championship pedigree. The Nuggets won a championship just a couple years ago, and I think getting through an obstacle like that absolutely rubs off. I know you worked in Denver for a couple years. I mean, that is a team that is not an easy obstacle by any means, and the Thunder got through it. It's supposed to get harder as the postseason goes on, but it feels like this Minnesota series, like there was a weight lifted off the Thunder's shoulders with the 7-game series over Denver.
Well, there's just such a different vibe when Nikola Jokic isn't on the floor, when you're not facing him. And I know Jokic didn't have his best series against the Thunder, but he's just such a dynamic player, and you just never know what he's going to be able to do against you. And I think Anthony Edwards is a great player, and there's a lot of talk about, you know, is he the future face of the league and all of that? And I think he's going to be really good. It's just totally different facing him versus Jokic. And I think that this Timberwolves team is also somewhat young. They have some older players like a Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, but the matchup just feels so much different. And like you said, the championship pedigree, the Nuggets knew how to make big baskets, win close games. I'm not so sure the Timberwolves know how to do that.
Well, think about how many times in the last series to close quarters, Denver had really good sequences. And Minnesota hasn't done that. The Thunder have actually had great sequences to close quarters so far through 2 games. And I thought last night, for example, in Game 2, it's a 3-point game with a minute to go. The Thunder come down, get a 3. I think they got a turnover, get another basket. And a 3-point game with a minute to go turns into an 8-point lead going into the locker room. And then they were able to carry that momentum, obviously, into the third quarter. But, yeah, this team has, I think, grown up a lot. The biggest thing that stands out to me about, I think, the previous series and this series, you watch a guy like SGA, who is obviously the MVP. He's a phenomenal player. You watch a guy like Jokic, and both of those guys are as efficient as it gets in terms of scoring, not to mention just their ability to control the game, see the floor, get others involved. They just both have such a great feel for the game. Anthony Edwards is every bit as talented, if not more, just naturally gifted than those two guys, but you can see a massive difference just in terms of his IQ of the game and his feel for the game, knowing when to call his number, when to be aggressive, when to get his teammates involved. He's not at that stage yet.
No, and I think you saw last night, he made an adjustment from Game 1 to Game 2. He was attacking the rim, and he got to the basket and made some tough shots, you know, lived at the free throw line, which I know has been a big conversation online, but I think that the Thunder have so many different guys they can throw at him. When you talk about Lou Dort, who I thought was just fantastic last night defensively after being named to the first team all-defensive team. But then you get Cason Wallace off the bench. Alex Caruso is everywhere, and I know he didn't have his best game last night fouling out, but they have so many bodies they can throw at Anthony Edwards, whereas Jokic, you like your matchup with Hartenstein to an extent. You know, Caruso was phenomenal in Game 7, but you don't have as many guys you can throw at him where you do with Anthony Edwards, and he's just a young player. And so I think that you're seeing him and that inexperience play out, whereas Jokic has been, you know, to the top of the mountain. He understands what it takes, and I think the Thunder are taking advantage of Anthony Edwards right now.
Shea has been phenomenal throughout this postseason run. I know he had a couple of clunky games, but he's, for the most part, been a steady force for this Thunder team. Chet and J-Dub have kind of been up and down, right, throughout this playoff run, peaks and valleys. It does kind of feel like, and I feel like their body language is now kind of showing that they are starting to fit into their playoff role and feel a little more comfortable with that.
Well, I mean, you talk about a player in Jalen Williams, J-Dub. You think back to the Nuggets series, and he really didn't play well, and he missed some big shots late in games. I think it was, Game 3 that he played really well, but other than that, he didn't. Last night, you saw the growth in front of you. He hits that big three. The Timberwolves were coming back. I think there was, 4 minutes left, and they had cut it to 10.
Yeah.
And J-Dub comes out and hits that wide open three. And that's where you're seeing the confidence build in him. And I feel like he's really starting to play a lot better, especially in those fourth quarter minutes where, Shea's off the floor and you have to start well in the fourth. I feel like he's really finding his groove. And I know he's battling that wrist injury a little bit, but it's hard, Colby, because you want him to be great, right?
Yeah.
But you have to remember, he's only in his third year. This is only his second time truly playing in the playoffs. And so you continue to see that growth. Chet, the same thing. It's like this is only his second year playing in the NBA, and he missed 50 games this year. And you see what he's doing in the fourth quarter in games 1 and game 2, and you just can't help but be excited, not only for this season, but after this season. How good can this group be?
And the fact that they're on a team where it's not ever about one person and not one person is trying to force their way into being a star. Sometimes you just kind of have to let the game come to you, especially when you're on a team that is as talent rich and as deep as the Thunder is. And it may not be your night every night, but you can't let that be an obstacle in terms of your optimistic view going forward.
And it just seems like there's no egos, right?
That's
when
right.
you talk about
That's right.
this team, it doesn't feel like anybody's upset. J-Dub's not getting enough shots. Chet's not getting the ball enough. Like, it feels like there's really good chemistry with this group. Even guys coming off the bench. I mean, talk about a guy in Kenrich Williams who didn't even play at all against the Nuggets, and all of a sudden he's getting really valuable minutes. And I think that just speaks to the culture and the chemistry of this group. And I think that's why a lot of NBA fans are probably mad at the Thunder right now, is because they're like, who are these guys? I think it was Charles Barkley, or maybe it was Shaq on the TNT show that's like, who's number 34? Who is that guy? And it's like, well, that's Kenrich Williams. He's been here maybe the longest of anybody, but that's what you love about this group, is it could be any one person's night, and obviously Shea's kind of the star. He's the MVP, but you saw last night just how many different guys can contribute.
Well, I'm excited to see what this group looks like now, getting past Denver and going on the road for the first time, games 3 and 4 in Minnesota. Let's hear from Mark Daigneault on what he expects going forward.
Minnesota came out and they were sharp and they were attacking and they were playing with a high level of pace and urgency and really tested us. And I thought, they got the best of us on some possessions, but for the most part, we were able to kind of maintain our game plan, with the main guys and also with the rest of their guys that are all very effective two-end players. So we did a good job, getting a counterpunch from them and being able to kind of take some counterpunches tonight. That was not an easy game, and they played pretty well in a lot of the stretches. And so we have to be ready for them to go to another level, like I said, as they go back home.
Ready for Minnesota to go to another level. The role players obviously are going to play better on their home floor than they have in the first 2 games in OKC. All right, we've got to take a timeout. On the other side, Shea wins the MVP. We'll get into it next here on the End Zone. Welcome back to the End Zone, along with our guest this week, George Stoia. I am Colby Daniels. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is the 2025 NBA Most Valuable Player. Something I think we've all known for a while, but it was a formality. It finally happened. He was hoisting the trophy in front of an excited Paycom crowd last night in the Game 2 win. He talked about in the postgame just the drain that it's been, emotionally, because it's something that every player dreams of when they're a kid. I wondered if there would ever be a point where I think the emotion started to wear on him, and he spoke on that last night after the Game 2 win.
Yeah, it felt really good. I feel like my emotions were like so high that I was like a little bit like tired out there, especially to start. I was like a little too juiced up, but special moment. I'm happy we won so I can like really enjoy the last couple of days and soak it all up. That really helps. But shout out to the team. Played well again tonight and head to Minnesota up 2-0.
He says he felt tired last night. You wouldn't know it because after winning the MVP, he scores a playoff career-high 38 points.
He's been unbelievable. And think about not only last night, Colby, but the last 5 games. I think he set the franchise record for most consecutive 30-point games in the playoffs for the Thunder. He's been sensational, in the playoffs for Oklahoma City and really proving why he deserves the MVP. And we talked, in the earlier segment about Jokic. And I think he was deserving too when you think about the stats,
sure,
the efficiency, the advanced analytics. Like, he was phenomenal, maybe the best season of his career. But when you talk about 68 wins, what this Thunder team's doing,
that's right,
the leadership for this group, you listen to his press conference the other day when he accepted the award, what he's meant to these guys, I think speaks volumes, and he was so deserving of it. And you saw it last night. So efficient. It felt like whenever they needed a bucket, he could come in and get it for them. He's frustrating the Timberwolves. McDaniel's throwing him to the floor. Like, that's the moment you're like, okay, we got him, because Shea is just really, getting under their skin right now.
One thing that I think gets lost in an MVP is you just look at the stats, right? And everybody wants to look at what Shea's done, what Jokic has done, compare the numbers side by side, and that's certainly a big part of it. You mentioned the 68 wins. I mean, that's always been a big factor in the MVP is team success, which OKC for the second year in a row is the #1 seed in the West, being as young as they are. But the key thing you said there that I think gets completely overlooked is leadership, right? This is the guy that's been here through the tough times, through the rebuild. This is the youngest team in the NBA. They're the #1 seed 2 years in a row, and I thought last night was a cool moment because Chris Paul was in the building, right?
Yeah.
Chris Paul was the mentor for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander when he got to Oklahoma City, and Chris was amazing that one season he was here, and now Shai is that guy to this young group, and that's something that nobody ever talks about. This is a young team that's having wild success, and he's the leader of it.
I don't think Shai is the player he is or the leader he is without Chris Paul.
100%,
and that's why I thought it was so cool to see him at the game. And I also want to say, this isn't a knock on Jokic's leadership either, right? Like, we know he's a very important leader, but you look at the turmoil that program has kind of faced this year, firing their head coach, firing their GM right before the playoffs, and that's obviously not Jokic's fault, but you look at the leadership, the culture that Oklahoma City have right now and what he means to the Thunder, and then you add the stats on top of that, and it feels like Shai was kind of the obvious choice.
No doubt. Shai, in his MVP press conference earlier this week, spoke on, I guess, the moment that he realized this was all possible.
I always thought that I could be a really good player because I had seen what just putting your head down and working and controlling what you can control can do for you, and I made tremendous strides. But I never, I guess once the conversation started a couple years ago, but I never thought this was gonna happen. I dreamt about it as a kid, but it's as a kid it's a fake dream. But to as the days go on and you realize that you get closer to your dream, it's hard to not freak out. It's hard to not be a 6-year-old kid again. And I think that's what's allowed me to achieve it. I try to just not focus on it and just worry about what's got me to this place, which is just working hard and taking it day by day and trusting the people around me and trusting the things that I've done to get me to this place.
He says working hard and trusting the process is what got him here. If I'm being honest, I was a big fan of Shai coming out of Kentucky. When the Thunder got him in the Paul George trade, I thought that was a huge win because I thought he was a young star player. I always felt like he was all-star caliber player, but if you had asked me 3 years ago, is this guy going to win an MVP? I would have said no chance. And that's not because I don't think he's good, but that's also a testament to the work he's put in the last 3 seasons to get to where he is now.
Colby, I'll be honest, I didn't know who he was when they did the Paul George trade, but you look back and you think, wow, what a win for the Thunder. And even going back to that bubble playoff series that the Thunder played with Chris Paul and Shai, I think was in his second year, and Shai played well in that series, but I remember thinking well, he'll probably be the third or second best player on this run that the Thunder eventually would go on. To get where he is now is pretty remarkable. It tells you about his determination, his work ethic. We don't really see him post a lot about that, but we know that behind the scenes he's really worked on his game. And to see the progression of him as a player and as a leader off the court, it's just been remarkable. And he's a great representation, I think, for this city. Very low-key guy. I love his outfits and all of that, but he's not a guy that's super flashy. He's not going to be saying crazy stuff in the media. I think he's just a perfect guy for this organization and really this city.
No doubt. All right, George Stoia is our guest. We're putting him in the hot seat. Smash or punt coming up next on the End Zone. All right, welcome to Smash or Punt. George Stoia is our guest this week. So, George, smash or punt, I'm going to make a statement. If you agree with it, you smash. If you disagree with it, you punt, and you tell me why. All right, first up, the 2025 Thunder. I've asked everybody this recently. The 2025 Thunder would dominate the 2012 Thunder team in a series.
Smash. And here's why, Colby. I think that team in 2012 had a lot of star power, but this Thunder team could match up well with them. You put Alex Caruso on Kevin Durant, Lou Dort on Russell Westbrook. You know, you can have Chet and Hartenstein to match up with Kendrick Perkins and Serge Ibaka. So I think defensively this group could match up. And then that team in 2012 wasn't the best defensively, where I think the Thunder could find some success on offense.
Smash all the way, and I think the Thunder's depth eventually depth would suffocate the 2012 Thunder over the course of a series, for sure. Similar to what they're doing in this postseason run.
Yeah.
All right, number 2, smash or punt. Minnesota will win 2 games in this series.
Punt. I think that the Thunder are like they might sweep the Timberwolves. Like that's how dominant they've been in these first 2 games. Where if the Timberwolves won a game and it's a gentleman's sweep, I would buy that. And maybe they do win 2 games. You know, I think the Timberwolves are still a really good squad. But the Thunder, the way they're playing, especially in the second half, late in games, it feels like they've really found their groove. And I think we're going to look back at that Nuggets series and maybe say that was their toughest series of the whole playoffs run. I
think you're right. I'm going to punt as well. I think they're probably going to split the 2 Minnesota games and then wrap things up in Game 5. I did have somebody tell me before the series started, Minnesota's a little overinflated. They beat a non-Steph Curry Warriors team. The Thunder were 2 plays away from sweeping Denver. Yep. Ultimately, it goes 7, which was probably the best thing for the Thunder, but maybe that's where people were skewed on how this series would ultimately go. Okay, you need 1 defensive stop. I'm going to give you get Lou Dort and J-Dub over Caruso and Wallace. You going to smash that or punt?
Oh boy, I think I'd rather take Caruso and Wallace.
Okay, so you're gonna punt.
I'm going to punt. I love those 2 together, and Caruso has been just so pivotal in these playoffs. And I know that J-Dub and Dort got those honors, all defensive team, which rightfully so, and I think that they're great players. Caruso and Wallace, though. I mean, I think Wallace, someday is probably going to replace Lou Dort as a starter on this team. And then I think Caruso is one of the greatest defenders we've seen in the last decade 100%. In the NBA. So I'm going to take those 2.
Dort does it over the course of 82 games, and Alex Caruso obviously doesn't play. The way he plays in the postseason, he would be dead if he played that way in 82 games of the regular season. So he has to save some in the gas tank. But I'm with you. Give me whoever involves Caruso, and I think Wallace is a future superstar, perennial all-defensive player type guy. But it's crazy to say that considering Lou Dort is first-team all-defense and Jalen Williams, who was so versatile this season, was second-team all-defense. All right, not including SGA, Alex Caruso has been the most valuable player to the Thunder this postseason.
Smash. I totally agree. I mean, when you think about what he did in that Nuggets series, and especially Game 7, there was a lot of parts that went into that. They ended up, cruising to that victory. He helped them win that game more than anybody. And I think that you see what he's done. Even going back to the Grizzlies series, he was a menace on the court. So, and it feels like, too, Colby, the Thunder can't make a 3-point basket. Caruso comes to the game, and all of a sudden he's making them. He just does everything. It's not just defensively, but offensively it feels like he's been on fire lately. So I think Caruso most certainly has been the most valuable guy, maybe other than Shea. And I could even make an argument, Colby, he's been as good as Shea in terms of doing his job and playing his role.
As valuable as far as what they're asking from him. It's a smash all the way. I think he is absolutely the next most valuable player. And part of it is because I think he sets the tone. The defense you're seeing this team play, I think, is set by his hustle every single play, starting with the first series and all the way through Minnesota. All right, the Thunder will win the NBA Finals.
Smash. I think that, like I said, I think the Nuggets might have been their toughest test. And I think this Timberwolves series could still go, 5 or 6, and heck, maybe it goes 7. But I trust the Thunder. They have home court advantage. And then you look on the other side of the bracket, and I think the Pacers and Knicks are good teams. I really think the Pacers have really stunned everybody this year in the playoffs. But if they were to get to that championship game, I just like the Thunder so much more than those other teams that I really think the Thunder would win, and I'm not so sure it would be close, Colby.
Barring injury, smash, Thunder, NBA Finals. All right, we'll wrap things up next here on the End Zone. All right, wrapping things up on this edition of the End Zone as we get ready for 2 road games, games 3 and 4 in Minnesota of the Western Conference Finals. More likely, George, that the Thunder win both road games or that Minnesota wins both home games?
That the Thunder win both road games. I really think there's a chance they could sweep the Timberwolves the way they're playing right now.
All right, another thing before I let you go. What is the most advantageous NBA Finals matchup? If the Thunder do close this out, Indiana or New York, that game 1 was insane. I look forward to an interesting Eastern Conference Finals.
I want the Knicks, not only because it would be awesome to play the New York Knicks in the NBA Finals.
Madison Square Garden.
Put the Thunder on the map, but also just because I think it's a better matchup.
It's a much better matchup. Give me Thunder in 4 or 5 if it's the Knicks.
I agree.
All right, that's George Stoia. I'm Colby Daniels. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll talk more Thunder playoff hoops next week here on the End Zone.